It's very unfortunate bonsai has a bad reputation that it's hard to keep alive. Hi, I'm miltonchang of Bonsaiheirloom. I'd like to do a commentary on soil mix. Last week, the commentary, one of our audience wrote me and challenging me about my soil mix, more or less saying that I'm all wet, I should be using Akadama. And that kind of shook me up a bit to, A, question if I'm really right. B, is that I want to make sure I address the person's concern. I'm not offended at all because I think any feedback is good. It challenges me. It reminds me of my younger days when I was more opinionated, and today I'm much older and more rounded in my thinking. So I think it's an Indian philosophy that you're good, I am good, we're all good, in a sense of there's really no absolute truth in anything, just about. Let me go over the soil mix one more time. And in fact, I would add, we should never talk about soil mix as a lone subject. Rather, when you talk about soil mix, you have to dive into the kind of trees that you have, more or less, because trees are fairly forgiving. But more importantly, is your watering habits. And how do you manage your nurturing your plants? So I addressed all of that. So I did a little bit of research, tried to give this more or less tutorial in a more thorough way. So the key takeaway is that you must make your watering habits compatible with soil mix and vice versa, because the two goes hand in hand. So let me go over some of the soil mix consideration. First of all, let me throw some weight around. I will quote three venerable bonsai masters. The first one is, of course, John Naka. And this book is, I think it's out of print, but if you can find on eBay and so forth, be sure to get it. There are two volumes. This is volume 1. There's a gold color volume 2. They're incredibly detailed and valuable, very appropriate for American bonsai in America. He is literally considered foremost and the father of bonsai in America. Oh, and he has received, he was born in Japan, grew up in the US, and then he went back to Japan again as a teenager. And so he learned both from Japan and from the US. And then he, in fact, won the prestigious Japanese Agricultural Award. So he's a well-known individual, and he lives in Southern California. The second one is about Yoji Yoshimura. This is the book. And this had something like 70 printings, that popular. And his father is actually a samurai and also a bonsai master. And so he grew up with bonsai, basically, and eventually became the curator of the imperial family's bonsai collection. So he's really a notable person, and in Japan, he had over 600 students. And then he was invited to stay in Brooklyn Botanical Garden to teach bonsai. And then later on, he also went to Australia for some months or some years. So he's really a bonsai master. And the last one, this book is pretty much out of print by Kiyozo Murata. But he's also very, very notable. And this one actually is written in English, published a long time ago. The 30th printing was in 1976, so it's like copyrighted in 1964, a long time ago. But it's in English, and it's very concise description of a whole bunch of trees. I'm not sure this is readily available, maybe on eBay. So summarizing what they said, none of them actually mentioned Akadama. That's a much later phenomena and made popular by, I think, good marketing. The general recommendations use subsurface topsoil. And I think the reason is that topsoil may have new manure and all that. It's not really totally decompose. So you want to go a little bit below the surface. For a humid area, you want to use subsurface topsoil plus a little bit more sand for drainage for the wet area, because you want to have aeration. And then for hot and dry area, then you want to plus sphagnum moss. I'm not sure when they say sphagnum moss is the New Zealand moss or the peat moss, but moss. And nowadays you can also substitute for coconut coir and clay and leaf mulch. Clay. And I think the point I also want to make is clay is really important. For the longest time, I was taught to kind of avoid clay. That is actually quite untrue. The fine powder actually allows better anchoring for the roots to grow. On the other hand, you do need the aeration for oxygen. Therefore, you want to add the mulch and the coarse material to have aeration, but still, clayey material is really important. That reminds me, when I did research, one of the articles says Syria had big desert area that has that's not for good agricultural production, and they wind up importing clay from the Niles to make the soil fertile and grow. And they have a huge area of agricultural production area near there in the desert. So let me summarize what you need in terms of the soil mix and go over each of the material that you can use if you want. First of all, I back to recommending 1 part sandy loam or 1 part topsoil with 1 part peat moss or coconut coir and 1 part perlite, and adjust. If you want to grow maple trees or willow for that matter, add a little bit of topsoil. And for pine tree, you may want to use add a little bit more sand. And the plus is it's low cost, and it's good water retention, good fertilizer retention, nutrient, and adequate aeration. Trees grow well, it's long lasting, and easy to repot. That's a big advantage. You shake loose the soil, it falls off, and the fine particle will still cling to the fibrous roots, and then the materials are readily available, of course. The minuses is that water runs off when it's totally dry. So what happens is that the topsoil, when you water it over time, the fine particle flows to the top, and they tend to kind of cake over, so to speak, so that when you water it, the water tends to run out and before it gets absorbed. And not only that, the edges become dry out, and so the water really runs out fast. And then when you water it, you think you're watering it, but it really runs out. So what you have to do, sometimes you take like a meat tenderizer and break up the surface a little bit. But for sure, if it's dried out, you want to water it many times so that it gradually gets soaked in, or put it in a basin of water. But don't let it dry out. And then one way you can tell is you can push on it. So long as it's supple, the top is a little dry, but the bottom is fine. But don't ever let your plant dry out in that kind of a soil mix. So that's what you will do for the trees you get from Bonsai Heirloom. They are good, but you need to take care of them. And Akadama, I would say Akadama is a very, very good material. It's a good water retention, good nutrient retention, good aeration, long-lasting, and tree grows really well. So what else more do you want? Well, it's a real bugger when you want to repot it. Let's say you haven't repotted for a long time. Some of the trees I got probably haven't been repotted for 5-10 years, and they're impossible to comb out. The roots actually penetrate the Akadama because it's basically fired clay, so there's still pores for the roots to penetrate and really stuck to the roots. You can't get rid of it. It's like a big solid lump of rock. And so that's the major one of the major drawbacks. But then, of course, costs. I think its average cost for a modest-sized bonsai is probably $30, I think. I don't use it. So that adds up like, oh, I have over 100 bonsai. That's over $3,000 worth of soil mix. I can't afford it. The next good substitute, very similar to Akadama, is really pumice and lava rock. They are also porous. They're good water retention, good fertilizer retention because they go into the crevices, and long-lasting and inexpensive, but oftentimes they're not readily available in certain areas. Then the last one I have to mention is sand. You know, sand is a very good material, but it doesn't retain water much or retain nutrients. So you can plant trees in pure sand, make sure there's no salt. They will grow very well if you water and fertilizer carefully. Like, you know, you circulate the water every few hours a day, plus with the building nutrient, the trees, I bet you will grow like crazy. In fact, that's what nurseries do in tropical country places. Like some Hawaiian nursery grow these tropical foliage plant. They plant them in pure sand or pure lava rock. You get it home in a month, the tree died because you don't water it as frequently as they do, and it really dries out because the water just runs out. You don't the tree don't get the water. So again, you can grow in pure water, right, hydroponic, so long as you know what you do. Again, in short, the summary is you must take into consideration watering habits as well as soil mix in one breath. Otherwise, you will miss out and the tree may die on you. That's why it's very unfortunate bonsai has a bad reputation that it's hard to keep alive. Many of my trees are over 50 years old. I've been growing them for more than 50 years old. They don't die really. So again, enjoy your journey in your bonsai. You can do no wrong. It's a very nurturing process so that it's very relaxing. And it's almost like meditation. It's a good hobby, and it builds community relationships, sharing good practices. With that in mind, then, I hope this video is informative. I hope you keep this so that you'll be reminded the importance of soil mix and watering habits should be considered in one breath. And please subscribe to our channel. We'll notify you of more other techniques video coming up. And finally, write us, send us your comments, feedback, and we like to learn from you as well. We share good information. So thank you very much. See you next week.